The art of using your fists, also known as fisting, is an acquired skill through many hours of grueling training, whether that be punching some dude in the face or clenching it really hard until your knuckles turn white. Being able to properly fist people in any of the 9 realms is a requirement to become the next God of War. Let's give it a go. The Leviathan axe is banned, the blades of chaos are butter knives, the spear will just be there so I can maneuver places, and Boy is stuck using his bow to hit things, because let's face it, we all saw what happened when he attempted to use his fists. He looked too much like me when attempting to punch wood, and that is just unacceptable. He has the advantage of being a half-god, while I'm still barely passable as functioning organs on some legs. I'm not counting anything when I'm not in full control of the character, because there's too many scenes where I'm stabbing somebody's lover, or chopping wood, or enacting the finishing move on most boss fights. Far as I'm concerned, if I can at least make it to that point, it's good enough. I can punch, I can kick, I can use the shield because there's no throwing the shield away in a ditch somewhere, and it's literally part of the attack combo. Spartan Rage I deemed fine as well, as the entire point of that ability is beating the ever-living shit out of whomever is lucky enough to stand face to face against me, and die a horrible death. Story things happen for the first 25 minutes or so that I'll let you explore, but in essence, my boy was lost somewhere after he lost his best friend and went to grieve out in the snow. Seeing as the snow is everywhere and has been for years on end, that doesn't give us a lot of context clues to go on. A giant bear attacked me because bears more often than not have a giant stick up their ass, splinters in their paws, and the need to ventilate their frustrations on the first thing that bother giving them any sort of attention. No one's quite giving me any sort of attention yet, so my frustrations usually get taken out on a punching bag. Bjorn was my punching bag in this scenario, and even though his HP was at absolute 0, I laid it on thick, and we're not going to talk about how pressing R3 does terrible things. Thor and Odin decided to pay us a visit. Can I just add that I love what they're trying to do with their hair, and that I'll be collecting compensation for the damages they left behind. Thor and I got into a heated disagreement about whether Avatar: The Last Airbender or that dreaded Avatar: The Blue People movie was a better franchise. If any of you say that the fucking Blue People movie is better than The Last Airbender, I will never forgive you. Consider this. One man was going fist only against another man who has a hard-on for a hammer. The fight wasn't overly difficult, as Thor is just a drop-melted ice cream puddle on the sidewalk in comparison to me, but at least he produces some world-class cinematography. He finally relented and admitted The Last Airbender was the superior Avatar. All I'm saying, Avatar didn't need $2 billion to create a masterpiece. Boy wanted to show me his metal poster and Pokemon card collection, but he hid it very far away for undisclosed reasons. On the arduous path there, we encountered some bad dudes with a health bar on top of a health bar. It's blue, which means the blades of chaos would make quick work of them under normal circumstances. Normal circumstances don't exist on this channel, however, and I was forced to tattoo their faces with my fist. Bar none, worst common enemies in the game to fight. They're hyper aggressive, they take a minuscule amount of damage, and stagger is a feature long abandoned and forgotten here. Do I need to say anything else about centaurs that I haven't already? I guarantee if the idea was not conceived roughly 2,500 years ago, modern day degenerates like myself somehow would have made it a whole lot worse. Amalgamating a human with a horse, that's some frisky shit. My brothers from presumably other mothers granted us residency into their home because being the mascot of the PlayStation brand has its perks. Also, Crash Bandicoot. His bum ass is a sellout to Microsoft of all companies now. My son wanted to go on a journey to become the very best like no one ever was, and we had to find Professor Tyr to get his starter. He was rumored to be in Svartalfheim, and escaping the never-ending winter in Midgard was an appropriate choice of action. Everything that so much looked my way ended up with fist marks on their face, and it was here that I figured out that everything was as allergic to water as they are to lava. Shove them in and they go see the great big lost Atlantis in the sky. No wonder we take a boat everywhere. Sindri granted an upgrade to Boy's bow. During the Only Boy challenge, it was the most welcome thing in the game. During this challenge, though, it was arguably the most useless one. A wild Dreki appeared, and unfortunately we had no pocket monsters to fight for us, so I made the difficult decision to fight it myself. The Dreki was certainly predictable, Boy was certainly there, and I claimed another head for my shelf in the realm between realms. Inside the mineshaft, I was not about to let this lizard spawner be more of a mini boss fight than about half of the mini boss fights again, and it felt like a good time to unleash my rage. I timed the Bergstrom Mother and the hateful boss fights on both runs and shaved off approximately 90 seconds on both. A chained up dude named Tyr lost his rope and ran away like a little chicken. Don't ask what happened here, video recording softwares are buggy, but watching God of War at a solid 4 frames per second really puts into perspective how blessed we are as gamers. Once again, Tyr is hiding behind Boy, doing absolutely all to help, and only proving to me that I am allowed to beat his ass whenever I please. I do find violence to be very, very fun. While Papa Kratos was busy napping, because napping is an amazing thing, Boy set out for the first time on his own holy expedition. Of course, it was in Winterville, aka Midgard, aka the planet that sucks donkey shit more often than not. This clip alone shows exactly why Boy instead uses his bow to hit things versus his fists alone. For Boy, melee with bow is good enough for me. It's the same damn thing. My quest to find Mommy Freya was short and swift, but I escaped with my life after many hours of discussion was had. I consider that a W. Alfheim was next on our quest to conquer the 9 realms with a lack of weapons. Species, elves. Population, -1 every time Bone Knuckles meet face. So legitimate question, as someone who is curious, do the elves in this game merely float or do they fly? Because every instance possible to knock these shiverbrains off the platforms I take, and they never come back. They aren't getting sent to the great big light source in the sky, so in essence I'm sending them on a one-way trip to hell? What's going on there? Obligatory axe flinging thing. This is akin to playing ping pong by yourself, but you're the spectator. It's kind of great. This round went by quick. Alva was the most exciting thing that happened there, so it's no wonder why Kratos hates Alfheim. I'm starting to hate Alfheim, not for the fact that it was brutally difficult, but for the fact that it was painstakingly easy to get through. Plus, Tyr continues to prove me right by being just about as useless as the second McDonald's drive-thru. While I was browsing Twitter and simultaneously losing brain cells, I came across a clip on there that pisses off the squirrel. So I put the challenge on hold for 2 minutes and kept ringing the chimes.
Stop with the stupid chime! Oh dear. I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from.
It was worth doing all of about once. Boy took a nap and teleported to another dimension that wasn't ridiculed with snow, so our living situation has already improved tenfold. He met someone his own age for once in his life. I think they will become very good friends. Atreus leveled up and unlocked his Spartan rage. Now he'll be able to chew on the faces of the souls who thought getting out of bed this morning was a pleasant idea. At least they tried their best. Strenuous family matters somehow equated to us getting into a boss fight with my very good friend's grandmother. Out of all the people that I've met, she is definitely one of them. Now this fight here is quite different compared to others beforehand, as while the enemy is the giant unique face on 2 legs, the actual target is the cauldron she's holding. Normally you just shoot it a bunch and move on. I hate myself, however, and we've landed in this situation. I was not convinced at first that this was even feasible. How do you hit something that was just out of reach? Then she stepped close to the counter and I seized my opportunity. Turns out you can actually melee the cauldron down if you can position Gryla in just the correct spot. Your melee range is short, but dashing forward and then pressing the attack button gives you just a bit more range. Beating down some metal with a bow was no doubt the hardest part of this entire challenge. A boss fight tailor-made to get you prepared for archery lessons should not be handled by physically using your weapon like a baseball bat. There comes a point in this fight where she guards her cauldron like I guard my chicken nuggets whenever I so much as sense that a thief is nearby. Hitting the target was a lot more convoluted, and there were even points where my weapon clipped straight through the bowl. Somehow, I don't think anybody from QA team tested this fight melee only, and I did end up having to use those candles to stun her, otherwise it would have went on forever and it's presumably impossible after that. But I did it. I got her down to the last little health bar. One thing about that, however, is that it doesn't trigger the final sequence of the fight. So yes, while I did miraculously knock all her health down with just my bow, it's ruined by classic story sequence bullshit. I give myself a B- for effort. Jotunheim was done. Papa Kratos was not feeling very oozy today and was upset that I had a fun night out with my very best friend without telling him, to which he then proceeded to go fist a lot of different icicle men looking to gain entry into our house. The pale guy has pissed off a lot of people in his life, and one decided that currently was the pinnacle time to enact their revenge. It went virtually nowhere, as nothing will ever scare me more than that fight with the bull from earlier. It was Freya, what a fucking shocker that is, attempting to gain some vengeance from that time we killed her son. I'm trying to remember why we did it, but the memory is eluding me. To make up for past deeds done wrong, we offered to help wipe away the stain that her ex-husband so unjustifiably granted, which just so happened to be guarded by a giant mutant blue lizard dragon thing. I don't know what this is, to be honest with you. It's kind of awesome, save for the fact that it was direct inspiration for Hoopa and creates portals to virtually wherever it wants. This is a problem. It hides up on pillars and trees. Freya is not nearly as badass as she was about an hour ago, and is completely out of melee range. You're required to use your Leviathan axe to scare it off its perch, meaning you cannot beat Ragnarok fist only, but I'm still going to continue anyway, as I've already gotten this far. Playing God of War is just satisfying as hell, and I still have questions about other things. Nidhogg was dead, my dreams were crushed, Kratos found a new best friend, sorry Mimir, and now we're back with Boy again. The fairy godparent himself invited me into his home, provided I climbed the 1,000-foot wall protecting it. I'm personally terrified to climb 5 steps up a ladder, and this lad here channeled his inner Jeff Hardy and started swinging willy-nilly between holes in the walls. Heimdall met me at the top, and I have to say, my grandma would love the outfit he's wearing. No offense to him, but he's a bit of an ass. I just hope the rest of his day is as pleasant as he is. Odin sent his gracious son to be the legal guardian on a field trip to find a chucked piece of wood somewhere in lava. Can you tell how well they're bonding? Unfortunately, the trip to Muspelheim lasted shorter than half an episode of Arcane, and most of the time was spent making sure everything that got smashed to mere particles wouldn't come back for round 2. I don't have the patience to disappoint them further. Midgard is rampant of enemies with these irritating bonus health bars, but it was here that I learned that Spartan Rage essentially neutralizes that rather efficiently. Good to know that turning on Gamer Rage mode solves all my problems. Midgard wasn't exactly getting any better, and it seemed like a good a time as any to clean out the trash. This traveler wasn't going to do it, so I beat his cheeks. The gifts of Fimbulwinter are never ending, a Shadow Ball attack gained sentience, and thought it'd be cute to challenge the video game protagonist. Any other character? That's a bad idea. When the character is the former God of War though, that's when you need to take a step back, reevaluate your life, and decide it would be better to just jump off a cliff. At least the death itself isn't so painful. I'm half tempted to call these three the Noodle Arm Collective, as their house is essentially a giant pasta bowl and nobody can convince me otherwise. If nothing else, we learned that Heimdall has to watch his life flash before his eyes, so the trip wasn't entirely useless. Getting an attack on Heimdall with my current setup was about as likely as my odds in ever landing a date, so something new was required to aid us. Brock offered his assistance to us. We love Brock on this channel, and if you feel the opposite, then you are not a good person. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. We're back in Svartalfheim, and we're making 2 dreams come true today. I get a new weapon, and Brock gets to finally meet his lady friend. It didn't go quite to plan. He learned some things that weren't very becoming, but Brock granted me his blessing for a weapon that shall be used to traverse the harshest environments and play spectator to the most vicious of foes. It felt like betrayal, continuing to use my fist while he stood around and watched as all his dreams turned to dust. But my happiness is more important than his happiness. Back with Boy, his quest for collecting wood was one mission away from completion, this time accompanied with Thor's daughter Thrud. Yep. Our boy Atreus Loki is going places, much further than myself. I never got the opportunity to impress anybody by mushing the brains of hellwalkers everywhere. We set free a giant mangy mutt from his chains because that's what good people do, and everybody was upset at me for it. Nobody offered any sort of assistance or even advice as to what to do, just that I f***ed up beyond all recognition. And Grandma Clothes over there reveled in my distress. Heimdall really is at the top of the bell curve, ain't he? I got sent home only to find the armies of hell at the doorstep. They were disposed of quickly enough, and while everybody else walked away, still chastising my actions, mind you, Kratos, being the Chad dad that he is, offered to accompany his boy to fix the mess. Crippling the limbs of walkers with my bare fists invoked dopamine levels into my brain that probably aren't healthy. The giant dog is my worst enemy as he kept fleeing the scene. Clearly, he's guilty of opening portals everywhere and knows enacting the rage of the 2 video game protagonists is not a smart option. I call the pigeons around my neighborhood those dumbass birds quite often, and for no reason whatsoever, this group of enemies reminded me of said pigeons. One by one, they jumped across the bridge, willingly killing themselves, knowing that should they bounce over, they'll get a boot shoved up their cheeks and come face to face with their second worst allergy known as heights. Garm finally accepted the call to battle, and it was time to punch his nose a bunch until he submitted. Damage comes in short bursts generally, and playing patient is the strategy once again, but it ain't anywhere near as bad as that damn bowl from earlier. Everything goes good for about half the fight until you have to freeze the chain in order to bring it down. All the damage is done with your hands, but there's another instance of using your axe to progress a fight. Compared to Boy Only Challenge, the time was actually about even at roughly 10 minutes. The second phase of Garm was more or less the same, only with a lot less battlefield but a lot less bullshit as well. Lower defense, less running, and no chunks of rock being flown my way. Boy officially cheated himself out of the challenge by using his knife, and Garm ran away. Everything always runs away from me. I just want to be friends. Garm was now dead and Fenrir lived on. Now we have a wolf bigger than 3 of my house to take care of. The giant beast who was a purveyor of chaos across all the realms is now under my control. Everyone should fear me. We're taking a trip down memory lane back to Vanaheim to tie up some loose ends. That giant chunk of rock in the sky called the moon just disappeared because someone stole it. If you can just walk into a realm and steal the moon, then you're pretty nutty. I actually take that back, as it was Heimdall who stole the damn thing, and we all know how much of a prick he is. He'll get his comeuppance soon enough. Plenty of basic entities stood in my path to restore some balance, so I left them in a cube of organs and bones with my bone knuckles. Only annoying part was chasing the dude down who wanted to add a few extra minutes to the overall story time by stealing the moon. As a reward for giving me some exercise, I gave him and his pet wyvern some sandwiches. Skull and Hati got their rock back, and it was now time to rescue Freya's brother, who got himself into a bit of a situation. Getting yourself captured and presumably tortured is not very becoming of a leader. If the head honcho is getting himself kidnapped, what is the fate of the rest of the crew? I don't care what everybody else thinks, I'll say it to his face. I think Heimdall's a total piece of shit. Spartan Rage was the very first thing that I tried because it works on virtually everything else, but the game said no, and the entire reason we got the spear in the first place was for this son of a bitch right here. The spear is required to stagger him only once, after that it's fair game. Obviously things are never going to be as simple as punch boss guy in the mouth and die of blood loss, and I had to counter his moves accordingly. I keep going back to it, but playing patient and picking your moments was the key to winning this fight. Provided you have enough willpower, it can be done. The first half is the painful part. The second half provides all the gratification of beating the shit out of the one who pisses you off more than anyone else. Comment below who your Heimdall is and just live vicariously through Kratos. Happy Ragnarok, everybody. The captured leader was found and we're right back into combat once more. Getting out of a hairy situation such as this one can only be completed by someone of the caliber of the video game protagonist. So we put the man on our back and ran roughshod over anything that so much glanced our way on the road to the river. Turns out the boat we got away on can fly because the purpose of a boat is flying. I really need to stop questioning how these things work and just roll with it. Our boy wanted some more time in the spotlight, and I wasn't about to refuse. Plus, the sword he had was a really good side companion, even more so than the few side companions he's already had, so that right there was a double win. Fetching Thor was priority 1 on the quest to finish my wood collecting, and he's getting drunk in a bar. He even admitted himself that he's a deadbeat. That takes a lot of confidence to say. It totally wasn't me who pushed him into saying that, though he didn't see it that way, and before long the entire bar went into calamity and ruin. In my defense, I love intentionally creating chaos wherever and whenever possible. Otherwise it's boring, and I do not play video games like this one to be bored. Thor finally relented and joined me. The Frost Ancient was about the one thing in this entire realm that gave a modicum of excitement to me, and even then I was severely disappointed. Part of me really wishes Thor was a playable character, man. A master manipulator is what Sif is in this scenario. Thor and I were becoming buddies, bonding about the endless bloodshed we left in our wake, and she just goes and ruins it by bringing up the past. Why must every 11 minutes of my life be filled with misery? We're at the point where we need to recruit the giant fire monster because things kinda took a turn for the worse, and enabling Ragnarok was the best course of action. That is a wild thing to speak out loud. We traveled to the home of Lava Girl to find our lucky culprit. He wasn't actually hiding much anywhere and left safety hazards every step along the way. I've seen a lot of collections in my time. These swords are definitely one of them. I can understand him not being very chatty, but sending a couple soul eaters my way to kill me was not very nice. Here's a fun fact, you cannot damage these things directly with melee. It's intended for you to use literally any of your 3 weapons instead. I'm good on that actually. Also, the winner for the most redundant voice line in the entire game has to go to Boy.
You're on fire! But you probably already know that.
Somehow I don't think telling somebody they're on fire is helping them in any situation. So, what do you do against an enemy who doesn't take direct fisting damage? You ricochet their attacks. When the Soul Eater spits out fireballs, parrying at the right moment launches it back at them. I will admit this is a bit of a creative idea and completely unorthodox to the regular way to slaughter these things, but within my capabilities, I was able to chip away their health. With enough wherewithal and dedication, the only thing used to win was the shield and fists. Both are within the rules. Surtur accepted an audience after I showed off the Blades of Chaos and figured becoming a giant fire monster and busting up Asgard was better than whatever the hell he was already doing. It's still unnerving to me that he switched hearts with his lover. I can only imagine the couples counseling those two would go through should the relationship ever end up on the fritz. Odin cannot keep his nose out of our affairs and sent a measly 2 Valkyries our way to stop our advance. To be honest, I found this to be good practice for when Ragnarok begins. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be a hard battle or not. If it was, they failed miserably. If it wasn't, then they did their jobs accordingly and deserve a raise. Though considering one got their neck cranked and the other got ripped in half thanks to Bjorn back there, I doubt there will be any severance packages. Getting out of Muspelheim this time around was a lot more easygoing than before. Mr. Allfather wouldn't quit, but this is just an opportunity to warm up before the big fight. Every time I listen to Kratos use Gjallarhorn, I get goosebumps. Whoever was in charge of that specific sound effect deserves a raise beyond comprehension. They meant it with that horn. This is Ragnarok, the holy grail of battles that pits several realms against Asgard, and I'm gonna win using only my fists. There was magic, spears, ogres, gods, and Kratos is out here whooping everyone in his church shoes. Using the oldest trick in the book to save some time, I just dunked everyone's heads into water and suddenly their lungs stopped obtaining all oxygen. Science is so amazing. Even though Sindri was going through a difficult time, he still allowed me to detonate the giant wall because I like blowing shit up. What a thoughtful lad. You would think Thor would have learned his lesson during our last brawl. As far as I'm aware, I still easily recognize that gigantic gash in his stomach. Though I suppose he was never one for thinking as he rushed headfirst into both fights without a plan. Dutch Vanderlyn would be quite upset if he found out Thor has no plan. For this run, I wouldn't even put Thor in the top 5 most difficult. Most of the time, I can rush and get some punches in, bobbing and weaving like I'm playing whack-a-mole and Thor's the player. Today, I learned that Thor is absolutely at whack-a-mole. The irony there. Odin was the ultimate fight of Ragnarok and the last one before glorious victory. Oddly enough, Phase 1 Odin wasn't all too different from the previous battle, only a bit more nimble in his movements. If I had a nickel for every time Cosmodin here dashed away from me, I'd have enough to buy not 1, but 2 whole candy bars from 7-Eleven. For being the one with the biggest stick, he sure doesn't swing it very well. Phase 2 is where the true strength came out. Boy cracked the sacred mask he spent eons searching for, and at this point, Odin had nothing left to lose. For all the effort he spent attempting to unlock the infinite knowledge he swore existed, I find it pretty comedic that it was all brought down by a 14-year-old kid that he placed his faith into to do his bidding. One of the most powerful gods in the 9 realms brought down by hundreds of bone knuckles meeting contact with his face. Boy decided his fate would be determined by a marble, said marble got smashed by Sindri, and I did not beat God of War Ragnarok with only fists. I blame that mutant lizard. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving it a like, or if you hated it, leave it a dislike. And if you haven't already, and you like what you see on the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Helps me out a ton. If you want to support me further, go ahead and check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Deelwheels and giving whatever you feel like. It helps fund these projects. Have a good one. Peace out.